Hello and welcome to Double Bass with the Bass Pixie. Now, throughout my time on this channel and my career as a bassist, I've been asked a lot about what gear I use and what strings. So I thought today we'll give a brief rundown of everything that I use on live gigs and for my videos. So I thought we'll start with the strings. The strings I choose to use on most of my gigs are the Rotor Sound RS4000s. Now I've used these strings for nearly 10 years now and they've been on 2 double basses and they still sound as good as the first day that I got them. The strings are actually recommended for full-size basses, so when I wrapped these onto the bass it actually wraps onto the string a little bit, which isn't recommended, but it hasn't ever caused me any problems in sound or in breakages because this is still the same set I've had from 10 years ago. Now as you can see close up, the strings don't look like a full set, and I've been asked a number of times, why have you got different strings on your bass? Well, I don't. These come just like this. The reason for the different materials is that the different pitches actually require something slightly different. So the top 2 are nylon wrapped with a nylon core. With them being nylon, you can't use magnetic pickup, but that doesn't matter because we have the best pickup on this bass, which I'll come to in a minute. The nylon is fantastic, but it doesn't carry sound quite as well as some other materials. And when it comes to the lower frequencies, you need a little bit more carry and a little bit more oomph to get those notes to cut through. So Rotor Sound have been very clever, and the bottom 2, they still have a nylon core, but they're wrapped in a substance called monal, which is made up of nickel and copper. And what it does is it brings a really nice, rich, warm sound to those 2 bottom notes, so you don't lose any sound quality. The other thing I love about these strings is they are the perfect balance between jazz, which I love playing, and rockabilly, which I really love playing. So I can play quite nicely. But the tension is also perfect for playing slap. The other thing to note about these strings is they've also been played on some really famous tracks. So the double bass on Lou Reed's Walk on the Wild Side had the Rotor Sounds. They were also played on the track Who Killed the Zootons by the Zootons. And finally, the Dave Brubeck Quartet played them on Time Further Out, if not more. Those are just the ones we know about at the moment. So these strings are actually my top rating, just pipping Innovation's Rockabilly Blacks or Reds to the post. I always tend to come back to them and they're a great set of strings. Okay, so let's move on to my preamp. Now, a preamp is not necessarily an essential bit of kit for any bass guitarist or double bass player, but for rockabilly slap double bass and for a lot of styles with double bass, because of its size and the potential feedback problems, a preamp is a really important bit of kit. So the one I choose to use is called the Shadow Rockabilly Pro. The reason behind that, first of all, is that my strings are nylon core, which means I can't use a magnetic pickup. Magnetic pickups are great. They completely eliminate all feedback. But for steel strings for slapping, you have to be either ridiculously hardcore, have such a low tension that you won't get a great volume, or suffer the blisters. And personally, I may be a little bit of a masochist, but not every gig. So this preamp is made by a company called Shadow. It is fantastic, and I believe it's made in Germany. The Shadow Rockabilly Pro was developed in conjunction with a bass player called Diddy Beck, and Diddy Beck is a fantastic rockabilly bass player. So the wonderful thing about this preamp is, first of all, it comes with the pickups that you need to pick up the sound. And with the Shadow, it comes with 2 separate pickups. One that goes on your bridge and one that goes underneath the fingerboard. The other good thing is that the 2 pickups have separate channels, so you can EQ your bass sound and your slap sound as 2 completely separate items. As well as 2 inputs, it also has 2 outputs. So if you want, you can output the sound of the bass notes and the sound of the click to 2 separate amplifiers. This is not something that I do. I've got a great amp and I love the amount of control I have just with the preamp and the amp over my click sound, and that is plenty for me. But if you really want perfect control over that click, you can feed it to its own separate amp and get a sound all on its own. The last little bonus about this preamp, now I think this is my favourite aspect of this preamp, is that it has a built-in tuner. Now if you're a double bassist, you will know for a fact that it is almost impossible to tune a double bass when there's any sound in the room. You'll get your tuner, you'll put it next to the F holes, and you'll play the G and you'll be fine, you can tune the G. Play the D, that's pretty good, you can tune the D. A, it starts to have a little wobble and it's going, oh, I'm not sure I can hear that. Then when you're tuning your low E, no chance. It just cannot hear what you're doing, especially if you've got your guitarist warming up in the background, your drummer hitting away, audience members or just crew members all around trying to do their jobs. You've got no chance. You're not going to tune that low E and it's just going to sound horrific. The beauty of this is it comes directly in from the pickup and it just tunes it perfectly every single time. With just one click of a button, you can tune your bass and there it is. No extra pedals, no extra carrying, no tuner. Doesn't matter if it's noisy, you just get a great tuned bass. Now if you're interested in how to fit the preamp, drop me a comment below. If I get enough comments, I will put up a video on how to fit this preamp. It is really, really simple. You need very minimal tools and any idiot can do it. Also, the way I've set it up is complete ease of use. It just works perfectly. It took me quite a long time and a lot of different little ideas to get the setup perfect. So if you really are interested, drop me a comment and I will get a video up for you guys. Another thing to add about this preamp is it's not just for rockabilly players. Okay, so I use this for my jazz playing all the time and it's just wonderful. It gives me such a warm tone and it picks up the notes perfectly, especially combined with my Mark bass amp. And not stopping there, this preamp was recommended by a friend of mine to an orchestral player. So this girl she played professionally in orchestras and she would really struggle with getting a good sound and also with a little bit of feedback occasionally depending on where they were playing. So she tried quite a number of preamps and he said, look, I know it's a rockabilly amp, but just try it, see what you do. She's tried this and she's in love with it. So even for bowed players, you have beautiful control. The fingerboard pickup can actually be used not just for the slap, but to maybe pick up a slightly different sound and get a nice mix of the two zones. So this is not only for your jazz and your rockabilly, but this goes across the board no matter what your style of playing. Next we're going to move on to my amp. Now this amp I've had for the whole 10 years I've been playing double bass and it has been an absolute wonder. I love it to bits. It's made by a company called Mark Bass, who generally make bass amps for bass guitars. When I spoke to them originally and to the shops, they were saying, oh, you know, we're not really sure about double bass. We've not heard, but I read on a few forums that a lot of double bassists do like this for the jazz and the rockabilly styles. So I asked them, can I pop up to the shop and can I just give it a try and see what it sounds like? And since then I've never looked back. The model I have is the Mini CMD 121P. Now the amp that I've got is an older version that they've got currently, so the settings are actually slightly different and I'll talk about that in a minute. So the 121P comes with a 12-inch speaker, which is great for smaller gigs and for jazz gigs, and also for when I'm using my in-ear monitoring system, because you don't need to be loud on stage. But if you have a gig where you need to be loud on stage or you're not going through the PA, then I also have the cab, which is a 1x15 cab, and it is just the basic Mark bass cab that goes and matches the amp. It's absolutely fantastic and it gives you an absolutely booming killer sound. One thing to note, both of these amps weigh absolutely nothing. I mean, I'm a tiny 5'2" girl and I carry them around without any problem whatsoever. There are a lot of amps out there that just weigh a ton and they're huge. These things are amazing. They're really, really easy to transport. They're pretty small for what they are, but they are the bomb. So the amp currently retails around £750 in the UK, €850 in Europe, and around $900 in the US. So it is a little bit of an expensive amp. It's not top end, but it's not bottom end either. It is a bit of an investment, but it really is an investment. This amp lasts and the customer service from my bass is really great. And I've had no problems with it since I've had it for the last 10 years. So the amp has a 4-band EQ and it's also got two of my favourite little knobs. These two little knobs are the VLE, which stands for the Vintage Loudspeaker Emulator, and the VPF, which stands for the Variable Pre-Shape Filter. But if you're anything like me, and I was at the beginning, you're going to go, oh, well, what on earth does any of that mean? So the VLE knob, it filters out the high frequencies, which on a double bass is what you want a lot of the time, because otherwise you'll pick up things like finger noise and some just nasty little things that just don't need to be in there. I mean, it's a bass, so you really want your bass frequencies, and it just gives it a much sort of more mellow tone. I feel like this is a really fantastic addition to this amp because it really does help, especially with the double pickup. It's something that I wouldn't buy an amp without these days. The second knob, the VPF, cuts the mid-range, which kind of sounds a little bit farty on a double bass, and it boosts the highs and the lows. Now, you're going to be thinking, well, I can do all this with my EQ. Well, yes, you can, but what this does is it takes the exact right frequencies. Mark Bass know all about double bass, and you've only got a 4-channel EQ range on your bass that you can play with, whereas the parametric EQ has about 40 different pieces you can play. I mean, even more a lot of the time. So there are so many different frequencies, and what Mark Bass have done is they've picked the really strong frequencies for double bass, and they've boosted those and cut that farty middle sound. So actually, alongside your EQ, it really does add an extra dimension to what the amp can do. Now, unfortunately, the new model of the Mini CMD 121P doesn't have both of these buttons. It does have the old school one, which for me is the more important one. That is the one that really works. And that the old school is the same as the VLE knob on my bass amp. So it is there, and that is really good. That's absolutely fine. So I would quite heavily still recommend the 121P. But if you still want both knobs, they are doing a model that still has the VLE and the VPF on there, and that is called the CMD JB Players School Amp. It actually retails lower than the CMD 121P. And it sounds like a great amp. I haven't played it myself, but it looks very similar to the model that I'm playing at the moment, and it is a 1x15, which is obviously a bonus. So the last thing to talk about is the output settings. So one thing I love about this amp is that there is a little button that you can bypass the EQ settings. So if you have an excellent soundman, you're playing Wembley Arena or big festival on the main stage, you know you're going to have a great soundman and he's going to know what he's doing. So you get your sound right for you. You plug it in and you can bypass all that EQ filtering and just send it to him completely clean so he can do his job properly. Probably a lot better than you as a musician can do yourself. And there it also has the DI XLR output and a couple more things like the grounding button and a few more. All in all, this is a great amp. And for me, the combination of this amp and this preamp have completely eliminated my feedback issues, which was causing me so much stress. I've tried a number of preamps before and it took me a while to get the settings right on my amp. But I'm there and it sounds great. Now, a lot of you might ask, can you show me your settings? Yes, I can. I can absolutely show you my settings, but my settings work for my bass. Now, as you can see, my bass is fat. It is also a 3/4. It's also a laminate. It is made of completely different things with a different size and a different shape to your bass. So unless you have this exact model of bass, my settings aren't going to be that much use to you. What you need to do is you need to learn about your bass and just play with it. So if you've got chance, go to a rehearsal room, find a big room, stick it in your lounge if you have to, as long as you're not going to wind up your neighbours too much, and just play with the sounds. Start off by flattening the whole EQ, get everything gone, and then start boosting things. Play along, see what boost one thing quite heavily and see what kind of changes that does to your sound. Play with everything. You want to just try changing one little thing. Does it make it sound better or worse by changing one little thing? Do I need to change it more or less? And then just work from there. If you take your time and your patience, you will eventually find the right sound for you. Now, the last piece of gear that I'm going to tell you about is actually my latest addition to my set. This is probably my favourite thing because it allows me to be a little bit mental on stage, which I do a lot. It also stops me tripping over my lead and pulling it out in the middle of a song, which I used to do all the time. So I got myself a wireless kit. This is the one, this beautiful Shure wireless kit. I've tried a couple. I tried a Line 8, which was good, but I had a few niggles with it and it was a bit of a problem. So I asked for Christmas one year, I think it was about 2 years ago, for the wireless. That's when you can tell you're a nerdy musician. You go, oh, can I have music gear for Christmas, please? So I asked for this for Christmas and I got this beautiful wireless kit. It sits on my bass and on top of my amp, and it's perfect. It has the perfect frequency response. The sound is exactly as it would be if I was plugged directly in. It is just wonderful. So definitely worth a look at. The only thing is to make sure you've got some super amazing rechargeable batteries, and you change at the beginning of every gig, because if you're anything like me and you forget, that can be a bit of a disaster when your bass stops working mid-set. So yes, it is one more thing to think about, but it means you can throw yourself into the audience, run around with your bass and do all sorts of crazy things on stage, and you're not fixed to one spot and in danger of pulling your leads out. So this is what I use. If you've got any questions, drop them in the comments. Also, tell me what gear you use. What's your setup? What amp do you use? Do you use a preamp? What kind of strings? I'm really interested to know what other double bass players are using. And also, how do you find it? Do you love your gear? Do you hate your gear? Have you got issues with it? Let me know in the comments. So if you're interested in the gear and you'd like me to go deeper into any of the bits of kit, let me know in the comments. I may do a full review of anything that people are really interested in. So don't be afraid to let me know. So if you've enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up and do subscribe. Don't forget, if you want more videos, you can sign up to my Patreon. It's starts at £3 a month just for support, so I can bring you more and more content to help you guys become amazingly awesome double bass players. So thanks for watching and keep rocking.